18 degrees. On to Tuesday, a bright start in the east, but another band of rain will spread in during the course of the day. Turning brighter but showery behind it, but all the time temperatures reaching only at best average. Remaining unsettled on Wednesday and Thursday, but hints of something a bit drier and brighter coming through as we head towards next weekend.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Mark Dolan and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel. GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. Whoever wins the next election will receive an unexpected boost. Brexit. With a booming economy and investment through the roof, our next Prime Minister can count their blessings that we're out. Were Nigel Farage's comments about some Muslims not sharing British values Islamophobic? We'll hear from all sides. And following shocking allegations about one of the professional dancers on BBC's Strictly, I'll be dealing with the biggest scandal in the show's history. Two hours of big opinion, big debate and big entertainment. My big opinion's on the way. Good news for our next Prime Minister. Find out why after the news headlines and the highly electable Ray Addison.
Thanks, Mark. Good evening. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. A British horse rider has died at an equestrian event in Devon. 36-year-old Georgie Campbell, who had represented Great Britain numerous times, fell whilst jumping a fence on the fourth and final day of the Bicton International Horse Trials. Governing body British Eventing said she was immediately attended to by medical staff but could not be saved. The horse Global Quest was uninjured. Now, the RAF pilot who died when his Spitfire crashed near RAF Coningsby has been named as squadron leader Mark Long. Police and emergency services rushed to the scene on Langrick Road in Lincolnshire just before 1:20 yesterday afternoon. Described as a passionate professional aviator, for the last 4 years he'd been a pilot with the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. The MOD has described the incident as a tragic accident, and an investigation into its cause is now underway. 8 people have been taken to hospital after severe turbulence on a Qatar Airways flight from Doha to Dublin. Dublin Airport said emergency services, including police and fire and rescue teams, met the plane as it landed safely shortly before 1 o'clock this afternoon. The injuries to 6 passengers and 6 crew occurred as they were flying over Turkey. Well, the proposed return of compulsory national service was rejected by a defence minister just days before the Tories pledged to make it law if the party wins the election. Andrew Morrison insisted there were no plans to reintroduce the policy and said it could damage morale if potentially unwilling recruits were forced to serve. Just 2 days later, as we now know, Rishi Sunak has outlined plans to make all 18-year-olds choose between serving in the army or volunteering in their local communities. Labour has dismissed the plan as a headline-grabbing gimmick. And finally, the Shadow Chancellor says there'll be no increases to tax or national insurance under a Labour government. Rachel Reeves is promising a tough set of spending rules that she says will grow the economy while keeping taxes, inflation and mortgages as low as possible. The Conservatives say their plan is working, but Labour argues that people are feeling worse off. For all the latest stories, you can sign up for GB News alerts, scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to Mark.
Thanks, Ray. Welcome to Mark Dolan. Tonight in the big story, were Nigel Farage's comments about some Muslims not sharing British values Islamophobic? We'll hear from all sides on that one. My Mark Meets guest was separated from her young children for 10 years after her ex-husband took them to Germany. I'll be hearing the devastating story of a family torn apart. In my take at 10, following shocking allegations about one of the professional dancers on the BBC's Strictly, I'll be dealing with the biggest scandal in the show's history. That's at 10 o'clock. You won't want to miss it. Also tonight, is the Sun newspaper about to sensationally back Sir Keir Starmer? I'll be asking the Sun's former editor, Kelvin McKenzie. And reacting to the big stories of the day, my top pundits this evening. For ringside action, Linda Jubilee, Neil Parish and Nigel Nelson. Plus, at the most important part of the show, your views, they come straight to my laptop, gbnews.com/your say. And this show has a golden rule. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Now, folks, a busy 2 hours to come. It's a bank holiday tomorrow, so I hope at least some of you have got the day off. Tonight, let's have a debate. Let's have some trenchant arguments. And let's have some fun along the way. A big 2 hours. We start with my big opinion. Whoever wins the election will receive an unexpected boost. Brexit. Our departure from the European Union must be the most misunderstood and maligned political event in our history. The narrative peddled by its critics on both the left and the right is that Brexit has been a disaster for this country, that it's made us poorer, more insular, and reduced our status on the global stage. Why let the facts get in the way of a good story? And many still prevail under the idea that our decision to leave a political bloc was a huge act of national self-harm. But just as water will find its way through a leaky roof, so the truth will out. The Brexit benefits don't come occasionally, they come daily. For example, today the Express newspaper report that the country is to enjoy a huge boost as Brexit Britain becomes a global manufacturing powerhouse. The paper writes that flourishing firms are taking on more apprentices as the fast-growing Made in Britain sector assembles a crack workforce of hungry young talent fit for the future. Since we left the European Union, the UK has now leapfrogged France to become number 8 in the world for manufacturing. Number 8 in the world, putting paid to the idea that Brexit would hurt exports, that it would hurt industry, or that we don't make anything in this country anymore. In fact, UK manufacturing is now worth £500 billion and supports over 7 million jobs. Meanwhile, the Office for National Statistics has said that the UK economy is, and I quote, going gangbusters. With inflation now close to 2%, we're out of recession, with the highest growth in the G7, beating France, Germany, Italy, and wait for it, the United States. Unemployment remains low, and investment into the UK is up. The long-predicted Brexit disaster has been like the weapons of mass destruction, non-existent. We're saving billions in EU membership fees and have avoided sharing the cost of the EU's, in my view, COVID overreaction, which some suggest would have made us liable for 90 billion euros. We get 100% of customs revenue rather than handing 80% to Brussels when we were in the bloc. We are now part of the CPTPP, which I thought was a cough medicine, but which is the largest trading area on the planet. Oh, and we do have a comprehensive free trade, tariff-free deal with the EU too, sometimes forgotten by those Remainers on both sides of the political spectrum who are still fighting a lost war. We've had the AUKUS defence deal with Australia and America, worth billions. Our sovereignty allowed us to take a lead in supporting Ukraine and with the vaccine rollout. Animal welfare has improved with new rules on the transportation of live animals. We've lifted restrictions on our service sector, which is 70% of our economy. UK ports have taken advantage of digitised shipping documentation. It's the 21st century, folks. And now we have business-friendly free ports as well. Global companies like Nissan and Toyota have invested further billions in UK PLC. The list goes on. Whoever gets in can invest heavily in British industries and develop innovative tax policies which boost employment and boost growth. In other words, whoever wins in July has the opportunity and the levers at their disposal to make Britain a global beacon of enterprise, skill and talent. Far from being an act of national self-harm, our next Prime Minister can count their blessings that we're out. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. Whether it's Rishi Sunak, whether it's Keir Starmer, whether it's Ed Davey, it could be the leader of the SNP, whoever runs Britain. They've been gifted not a poison chalice, but an absolute pocket of gold. So let me know your thoughts. Get your reaction very shortly. First of all, reaction from my top pundits this evening. We have political commentator, the brilliant journalist Nigel Nelson. I'm also delighted to welcome former Conservative MP and farmer Neil Parish and journalist and broadcaster Linda Jubilee. Great to have all three of you with me, folks. Lots to sink our teeth into there. And of course, the point is, Nigel Nelson, that notwithstanding whether it's a likely contest between Sunak and Starmer, either man will inherit a country with huge potential.
Well, potential certainly, but not because of Brexit. If you voted for Brexit because you wanted British sovereignty to take back control, in Dominic Cummings's immortal phrase, you got what you wished for. If you voted Brexit because you wanted the economy to improve, then you didn't. So you mentioned various things. Manufacturing jobs down by 74,000 since Brexit happened.
We've just leapfrogged France to go number 8 in the world. We've also just had a pandemic, which I'm sure has impacted manufacturing.
I'm sure it has. But you also mentioned GDP, and yeah, that's looking quite good. But when it comes down to how well off people feel, deal, it's GDP per head which matters more. We're above France, that's true, below Germany, half the GDP per head of Ireland, and way behind the Nordic countries.
Well, this is because Ireland have cooked the books with how their tax rates work, and we know that lots of big businesses are headquartered in Ireland. It's not exactly Monte Carlo.
OK, well, then we'll move over to business then. And with the new border controls coming in, just the paperwork for meat, cheese, fish, that'll cost 145 quid a consignment, 300 million overall extra cost to business. And as far as we're concerned, things like food prices have gone up by 25% since Brexit.
Food inflation has been comparable to the EU.
Yep, but food inflation has gone up by 25%. Of that, it's not all to do with Brexit. Of that, 8% is due to Brexit. That costs each of us £250 a year.
Well, the point is that the economy is growing. We're number one in the G7 post-Brexit. Make it make sense, Linda Jubilee.
Well, here's what I would say about Brexit, and I always remember this phrase from my old boss many years ago at Sky News, the CEO, Sam Chisholm, who said to me, the important thing about a decision is you make a decision and then you make it work. Now, what has happened here is we've done Brexit and we have to make it work, but it will be hard work. Now, I agree with you, there's some potential, but at the end of the day, we have declined in manufacturing terms since the 1960s. And at the moment...
That's got nothing to do with Brexit.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying is the fact that we're in this position now is not the best we can do. It's a good sign, but it's not the best. Now, where apprenticeships are concerned, they have declined since 2015. The numbers are considerably down.
And that's been government policy, hasn't it?
Yeah. So, but I'm trying to look at this with some sort of perspective. I don't think you can look at the situation with unalloyed glee, because the fact of the matter is, I think that looking at the economy now is rather like looking at an electric mouse, you know, that you wind up and slowly it winds slower and slower and slower. And that's where we are right now. We do not have enough momentum in this economy, and we don't
We've got more momentum than the United States, France and Germany. What happened to the Brexit disaster? Where is it?
Yeah, but I'm not saying that we should harp on anymore about whether there's a disaster or not.
Well, there is no disaster.
There is no, that's right, there is no disaster. It wasn't disastrous, but you can't...
But we were told it would be, and we're still being told by The Guardian that it is.
Well, my point is we have to leave this behind. We have to leave it behind.
Well, this is it, and isn't that the point? Our next Prime Minister has been gifted a great opportunity, Neil Parish.
I mean, I think what we've got to accept in the world now is that most of the growth now is in the Far East. It's not actually in Europe. And so, therefore, if we could actually do a trade deal with India, because the EU is never going to do a trade deal with India because of agriculture, because of many other things. So
and too many countries.
Too many
27
countries.
opinions.
And so, therefore, you know, there is... I mean, Brexit was always going to be a bit like the curate's egg, good, bad and sort of indifferent. But what it is it does give you the opportunity to do those individual trade deals. I think we've got to get stuck in. I agree with you over the apprenticeships, because I think that's where we really got to go harder and faster to make sure that things are produced in Britain. And as a farmer, if we want to produce more food in Britain and not import so much from the EU, I think that's a wonderful idea.
Well, nice.
So let's go for it, because, you know, in a way, we have really relied on too much on imports over the years. So if imports are a little more difficult, is it going to be the end of the world? Probably not.
I mean, Nigel Nelson, you are quite the party pooper. Oh, blimey, put my bottom on.
That's what he's about. Come on, for.
Please don't poop at the party, otherwise it's gone too well. Nigel, if Keir Starmer wins, he has said he's going to actually embrace the advantages that Brexit brings.
Well, of course he will. I mean, there's no question that we're going back. I mean, the argument's been lost. Keir Starmer will do that. What he will try and do is get closer relations with Europe. They are our nearest trading partner. That's the right thing to do, but it doesn't mean going back on Brexit.
Is Brexit safe in Labour's hands?
Yes.
And what about the Tories? I mean, if they were to sort of win an unlikely small majority at the election, where do you think Rishi Sunak might take Brexit?
Well, I mean, I think the Tories have got to settle down and realise that Brexit has happened, and you can't carry on having more and more Brexit. So therefore, do the deals and keep going. And I think that's what I want to see the Tory party do, because the trouble is, part of the Tory party just beats itself up and says, you know, there's not enough Brexit. That's the problem. Well, we've had about as much Brexit as we need. So let's get get on with
talking.
it.
Are you telling Jacob Rees-Mogg to pipe down?
Would I be so rude as to tell Jacob to do such a thing? But I think there are two views on that. And, you know, I mean, Jacob, I think, moved quite a lot of his business to Dublin and other places, so it's interesting what people do.
OK, Linda, briefly, the Liberal Democrats, they could hold the balance of power if the numbers are tight.
I think
the next
they can.
election. Could they influence the UK Prime Minister's Brexit position?
It's possible, but they would have to get... They'd certainly have to do well getting a number of seats. I did hear this week that they are likely to get Maidenhead, which is Theresa May's old seat.
Yeah.
And I think there are concerns about the seats that co-join that constituency, and there could be a swathe of Lib Dem wins across there. Where I originally come from in Richmond, that is a Lib Dem area with Sarah Olney and Munira Wilson. That could spread further that way. And once they've got a few seats, yeah, sure, they will.
Very briefly,
what the Lib Dems are good at is very much targeting seats, and where they know they are the opposite to the Tories, and they will get they will get a lot of Labour votes over to the Liberal Democrats. That's how they win their seats, by tactical voting.
Fascinating. Does Brexit concern you in relation to the election? Is it a factor? Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. But next up in the big story were Nigel Farage's comments about some Muslims not sharing British values Islamophobic. We'll hear from all sides on that next.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Well, we're delighted about this because the boss of JD Wetherspoon has credited demand for fashionable Guinness as the pub chain reported a jump in sales.
Now, Guinness has benefited from a boom in demand over recent years, shaking off its association with rugby lads and old men to appeal to a much younger audience and loads more women.
We've got our Guinness here.
Oh, yeah.
Cheers to you.
Cheers.
I'm not sure about this boozing on air at this time of the morning, but I'll let you off on this occasion.
As it's you, Tim, as it's you. Now, Guinness is an acquired taste for many people, so I'm surprised it's become so popular.
Yes, it is a real surprise. I think it's always been a popular drink among the demographic you mentioned, the older guy. There's about 80 or 90% of pub trade over the last 30 or 40 years, and probably longer, are a similar range of products. But there's a varying 10, 20% according to fashion. You had vodka Red Bull 20 years ago. You had an Irish cider poured over ice, which came from no one knows where. You had Alco Pops. So there's an unpredictable range of products which have been the fashion of the moment. But the fashion of the moment, very unpredictably this time, is Guinness. And no one knows why. As you say, it's an acquired taste. Young people tend not to like it. Most of the fashionable drinks over the decades have been quite sweet. And Guinness obviously isn't. So, yes, I think the Guinness brewery, St James's Gate in Dublin, they'll say it's brilliant marketing. But like the rest of us, they rely a bit on luck.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
OK, folks, do we have time for some feedback? Let's get to it. gbnews.com/your say. Whoever our next Prime Minister is, has been handed a tremendous advantage, which is an independent, sovereign United Kingdom post-Brexit. This from Paul, who says, "Hi, Mark, Brexit is a 20-year programme. The shoots are good. If people like Nigel Nelson on your panel hadn't tried to stop it, we would be at least 3 years further into transition." How about this? Emily says, "Mark, the political party who wins the next election will have to make sure that we have all the Brexit benefits that we were promised to us, and this will give Britain a huge boost." Keep that feedback coming. Let me tell you that I've got the inside track with quite a few MPs on both sides, Labour, Lib Dem and the Tories, and I've just received a text from a very prominent, high-profile Conservative backbencher. I asked him earlier, are you happy with the election date, because I haven't sought that person's counsel recently. Anyway, there's an angry reply. No! Exclamation mark. There's trouble at mill. But listen, folks, the election date is set. It is the 4th of July. You'll get the best coverage here on GB News, and in particular on Mark Dolan tonight. It's time now for the big story, and this morning on a media round, GB News star and honorary president of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, said there's a growing number of young people in the UK who do not subscribe to British values, specifically citing Muslims. Take a listen.
We have a growing number of young people in this country who do not subscribe to British values, in fact, loathe much of what we stand for. So what do you do?
Who are we talking about there?
Oh, I think we see them on the streets of London every Saturday.
What do they look like? Oh, we're talking about...
What do they look like?
Are we talking about Muslims here?
We are. And I'm afraid I found some of the recent surveys saying that 46% of British Muslims support Hamas. I am not here to attack the religion of Islam, but I am here...
Well, you've just been doing it for 3 minutes.
No, I haven't. I'm telling you the alarming figures that have been coming out of these recent polls, particularly in the wake of what has happened on October the 7th and in Gaza, and we have a real problem here.
So were these remarks Islamophobic, or is Nigel Farage right to point out that a portion of the Muslim population in the UK does not subscribe to the values of this country? Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. But to discuss this, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Sheikh Ramzi, who is an imam and director of the Oxford Islamic Information Centre. A privilege to have you with us, Dr. Ramzi. Thank you so much for appearing on Mark Dolan tonight. First of all, your reaction to Mr. Farage's comments, are they Islamophobic?
What I would like to say, of course, on the general, as what he was saying, it started, the interview started badly, gone worse, and of course end disaster. And it all was about hatred of the Muslim and Islamophobia. He shows truly the person who is Islamophobic. Of course, I've been interviewed with Nigel Farage many times. I didn't see that, but of course, I can say, yes, it is Islamophobic. He gone too far to show the hatred for the Muslim and, of course, degrade the Muslim. Unfortunately, degrade the Muslim. He said they are uneducated. They cannot speak English. They are Hamas supporter, which is called this country called terrorist. Hamas supporters, the demonstration which he does is wrong, and many things which he said, of course, it was completely untrue, and it is not good for the integration of the Muslim to the communities and of course Muslim community. And he said about the British value. The British value, the Muslim all have a British value. Maybe one or two here, handful, they haven't got. However, they in the school we teach them the British value. In the university we teach them British value. Even if they Tesco they go in, they see the British value. Unfortunately, one of the things which I have in the British value, 5 things which we have, my dear, is a mutual respect. Is one of the British values, a mutual respect and tolerance of those of different faith and belief.
Now, Dr. Ramzi, you've used Dr. Ramzi, you've used very strong language about Nigel Farage. You've said hatred. He's expressing a view that a growing number of Muslim Brits are not demonstrating British values. Now, Dr. Ramzi, let me ask you, for example, what about those pro-Palestine marches every weekend? as a result of which many Jewish people are afraid to leave the house. You've got Jewish individuals not wearing religious clothing for fear of attack. You've got people chanting for intifada, which means suicide bombers on public transport. From the river to the sea, projected on the House of Commons. Surely that doesn't represent British values, Dr. Ramsey?
What we have to say, of course, they are doing. The police is in charge there. Of course, is a great value we have for our police metropolitan, which are in charge, and they see if anything gone wrong, they get the people. However, they are is a democratic, full democratic country in the world. The first democratic country in the world is the United Kingdom, and they are using their democratic right to do it. Of course, come on, you find the one or two people which they're doing wrong.
Dr. Ramsey, is it more than one or two people shouting from the river to the sea, calling for a global intifada for the destruction of Israel? It's more than a few people, isn't it, Dr. Ramsey? Do you condemn them?
Anyone which they want, of course. The Israel always said Israel and Palestine should be two states living together in peace and the brotherhood. It is not. It's very, very important. And of course, we got some. They say these. For example, MPs, which they said, for example, from the river to the sea, it is not anti-Semitic. Unfortunately, they showed, of course, it was Dominic Grieve, which he says is the head, of course. And what is happening is Muslim and Jewish. It is not about the Muslim and about the Jews. They are brothers. They know we are interfaith. I'm head of the interfaith. Every day we see the Jews and we say, shalom, shalom alaikum, salam, hello, everything. But it is about the government of the Israel with the head of the Netanyahu, which goes against but the people of the world, all the people of the world going against, for example, against the atrocity. For example, you see the Spain and the Ireland and other one. Are they all terrorists? They say, stop the war, stop the war. Are they all terrorists? We can say, oh, well, he is terrorists. No, they are not. They are human rights. They want to do the human right. They want to do the ceasefire. And by the grace of God, ceasefire soon coming. And I'm sure this country, United Kingdom, can lead in this one and save many
Dr. Ramsey, absolutely. Listen, we were in touch earlier in the day with a man that was very briefly the government's anti-Muslim hatred czar, appointed by Michael Gove, Fiaz Mughal. And he's not been able to join us on the programme, but he's given us this statement. He said, I think that Nigel Farage has stated something that is fact. That a small but intransigent number of my co-religionists fail to fully understand and accept some core values of our country. However, are they growing in number? No, they are not. This is where I would disagree. But there you go. That's Fiaz Mughal, who disagrees with what you've got to say there.
With respect to Fiaz Mughal, is a very, very close friend of mine. We know about each other about 20 years, but he is wrong. Because majority of the Muslim in this country, they are taxpayer, they are good people. They are, and listen, there are 4 million people. They are working as a started the dustman to the shadow ministers in the parliament, to the doctor, to the universities. All they contribute, and we can't just crashing them. How much we have to take? Please say we want to integrate, we want to have a cohesion, we want to have a brotherhood, and please be with us. And of course, again, I said the culture is respected, the faith, all faith respected, all culture respected.
Dr. Ramsey, you're so right. That is a message around which we can unite to come together. Let's get reaction, if we can, Dr. Ramsey, from my pundits this evening. We have Neil Parish, Linda Jubilee and Nigel Nelson. Neil Parish, your reaction to what Nigel Farage had to say today on television?
I think Nigel went plenty far enough, because I think once you start talking about, 46% of young British Muslims, disagree with perhaps our British values, I'm not sure how you can possibly justify that figure. And I also think that we do have to bring everybody together. Now, I very much, detest the idea of wiping Israel off the map, as what really basically some Muslims are chanting. But I think the trouble is with these comments, and perhaps some of them need to be made, but I think making them in the way he did, I do actually think inflames the situation, because we are very much a multicultural country. I think our British Muslims actually make a good contribution to our culture overall, and so I think, let's not split ourselves asunder. Now, I very much support the state of Israel, and I very support the Jewish community, but I think let's be careful how we deal with the situation, because we do want to bring everybody together. While this war goes on in Gaza, while Israel keeps pounding Gaza all the time, there is going to be a lot of, Muslims are going to feel very enraged by it. Now, it doesn't justify what they're doing, but let's be balanced about it.
God bless you. Nigel Nelson, a poll from 20th of February earlier this year, and it was an ICM poll of British Muslims published in the Sunday Telegraph, found that 40% of British Muslims wanted Sharia law in predominantly Muslim areas in the United Kingdom. Does that bear out some of what Nigel Farage has had to say?
Well, yes and no. I mean, this poll that Nigel Farage was referring to was done by the Henry Jackson Society and came up with a similar kind of figure on that. And there are some results there which are disturbing, that moderate interfaith groups like Tel Mama are worried about those kind of results. But the central issue there, the poll never asked Muslims whether or not they supported British values. That question never turned up.
It's important to point out, Nigel, isn't it, that they were offered a choice of supporting Israel or Hamas. So therefore, it was sort of a multiple choice poll rather than proactively supporting Hamas.
Palestine, supporting Israel and Hamas. That's wrong. You could say supporting Israel or Palestine, or supporting Netanyahu or the Hamas.
I think you're right. Dr. Ramsey, you're right. Yeah. Dr. Ramsey, can I ask you another question before I come to Linda? What about the school teacher in Batley who showed his students images of the Prophet Muhammad as part of a class, a lesson in regards to media studies, who is now still on the run? That doesn't represent British values, does it?
These are not a matter of the British values. This is a matter of the religion, and of course the scholar of the Islamic scholar thing is nothing to do with the British value.
But that man is on the run, Dr. Ramsey. That man is on the run because there is a mob who could hurt him if they find him.
I'm not part of the law, but what I'm saying, if he says offensive, of course. If you show to me, listen to me, if you show to me an offensive from the Prophet, I say, God bless you and may God guide you. But some people does not. They say, oh, that was a total wrong, and get the law to their hands.
Dr. Ramsey, those people, would you agree that those people do not have British values? The people who are threatening the safety of a school teacher?
It has nothing to do with the British value. There is something which happened. For example, if somebody offended my mother, I'm saying you are that and you are that, and after that you say is a British value. Of course, you offended my mother. I say you offend my mother, but don't offend my Prophet.
Dr. Ramsey, I would never offend your mother. I'm sure she's quite a lovely lady.
God bless you. God bless you.
Well, she made you, so she did something right. Linda, a couple of seconds. I'm so sorry, the clock's against us. Your reaction to all of this, can you unpick it for us?
I think Fiaz Miguel is absolutely right. There's a small but intransigent section here that we should be worried about, but I don't believe that the broad sweep of British Muslims are a problem. I can tell you that I have worked with Afghans, for example, since the fall of Kabul. I'm helping them with their communication strategy right now. I walk into that office and there, on the side of the wall, are the 5 British values in a frame that we walk past every time we go into the building. I don't think you'd see that in most offices in this country. Now, where Nigel Farage is correct, absolutely correct, is when he pointed out that there were pockets in this country where people speak no English. Now, that might seem like a cosmetic thing, but it is not. It is the #1 concern when it comes to integrating people into UK society, and we're not really tackling it.
Absolutely.
Can
I say,
couple of seconds, Dr. Ramsey.
Each Muslim, at least they speak 2 languages. You have to remember, and this is an asset of the countries. And perhaps if they did not talk to the Nigel Farage, they will talk to me, and I assure you they are. Some time ago, 10, 15 years ago, let me tell you, 15 years ago, I was in LBC with the Nigel Farage. The David Cameron wanted to give 20 million to educate, and he said, no. I said, let's learn, let them get English. He was the person that he said, no, don't spend the money.
And there are...
He's a good man. Nigel Farage is a good man. I'm not saying he's bad. He's a good man, but wrong ideas.
There you go, Dr. Ramsey. Let me tell you that there are plenty of Brits living in Spain who don't speak Spanish. So, Dr. Sheikh Ramsey, thank you so much for joining us. Imam and Director of the Oxford Islamic Information Centre. Catch up again in the near future. Thank you for the blessing, Dr. Ramsey, and what a fascinating conversation it's been.
Of God you are.
Oh, my goodness, I'll take that. I don't get compliments like that very often, especially not at home. Listen, folks, lots more to get through. Don't forget, at 10 o'clock, a massive scandal on the set of Strictly. But next up, we've got lots to get through. A drama for Meghan Markle. That's right, a major new headache will get reaction from the country's leading royal author. See you in 2.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking ahead to Bank Holiday Monday, and it's remaining unsettled across the UK with some further showers at times. Reason for the unsettled weather is this area of low pressure. It's going to hang around all weekend and into next week, maintaining this unsettled feel. For the rest of Sunday, still the risk of some further heavy rain, especially across parts of Scotland, but down towards central and eastern parts of England, it will turn drier and clearer. So here, a bit of a chill in the air first thing on Bank Holiday Monday, but elsewhere under the cloud and rain, temperatures holding up above 10 to 11 degrees. So, as I mentioned, some clear skies initially down towards eastern and central England, so some sunshine here first thing in the morning. Further west, we will see some showers, and they will migrate their way eastwards as the day goes on. For Northern England and Northern Ireland, again, a mixture of some cloud and a few bits of brightness, but again, some rain around. Southern Scotland, the risk of some persistent rain still here, with a mixture of bright spells and a few showers further north. But it's in fact across parts of northern Scotland where we do start to see the sunshine heat the ground. We will see some heavy and thundery downpours developing, so watch out for some thunderstorms here as we go through the course of the day. Elsewhere, still the risk of some showers, but they will be fewer and further between compared to Sunday, and also a little bit lighter. But for all of us, it will be a slightly cooler day. I think highs reaching around 16, 17, possibly maybe the odd spot seeing 18 degrees. On to Tuesday, a bright start in the east, but another band of rain will spread in during the course of the day. Turning brighter but showery behind it, but all the time temperatures reaching only at best average. Remaining unsettled on Wednesday and Thursday, but hints of something a bit drier and brighter coming through as we head towards next weekend.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The
People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
If you thought the election was feisty and personal, Meghan Markle has been slammed by the First Lady of Nigeria For flaunting her nakedness everywhere during her recent visit to the African country. The Duchess of Sussex spent 3 days in Nigeria earlier this month, where she was accompanied by her husband, Prince Harry. Meghan made a number of outfit changes during the trip, and it seems her fashion was taken as a profound insult by the First Lady. Take a listen.
Don't accept nakedness in our culture. That is not beautiful. It's not beautiful at all. Why did Meghan come here looking for Africa? That is something we have to take home with. We know who we are, and don't lose who you are.
Well, for reaction to this growing diplomatic row, I'm delighted to welcome revered royal author and Prince Harry biographer Angela Levin. Angela, lovely to see you again. I've never thought of Meghan Markle as someone who flaunts her body. Are these remarks a little harsh?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I was furious when I saw her. I mean, she went to go to a school that was a very religious school, Muslim school. All the girls had their heads covered, and the women, the teachers had things, you know, they're supposed to cover your shoulders. They had that and some sort of hat. And she went with a backless dress, which went down her side, right? I mean, you don't do that.
But by Western standards, that's not provocative. That's not exactly Madonna, is it?
Well, I think it is very provocative, because if she'd been going representing the royal family, they wouldn't go anything. She wouldn't wear anything like that. But she should know, it's common sense that you don't try and make people angry or embarrass them or flash your body in those sort of circumstances. I thought it was absolutely appalling. You should see me. I was livid with it. And also, again, you know, wearing string tops to it. I thought her choice of clothing was absolutely terrible.
Here she's dressed quite similarly. You see those pictures just there, quite similarly to some of the people welcoming her.
Yes.
So it's, there you go, just take a look at that. I mean, she's wearing the same outfit, more or less, as that young lady who appears to be...
Yes, but that young lady isn't going as a sort of royal. That young lady could be anybody. We weren't introduced to her. We don't know. They're there trying to mock the royal family, and so they've got to show something which is dignified, and I don't think that's dignified. I think it's absolutely appalling and completely unnecessary.
And why do you think that Meghan Markle made those wardrobe choices? What might have motivated that choice of outfit?
Well, I think she didn't have aides to help her. I mean, the royals who go out, they have a lot of discussion. They have weeks of studying it and what's appropriate and what isn't. But one of the things I think is that her behaviour, looking like that, so inappropriate, will sort of slide down to affect the royal family, because they had so much that was royal. You know, they're going from one thing to another. And I think that it wasn't just a visit. It was Harry and Meghan trying to take over from the advantage that King Charles and Prince William, can't go away. And so, therefore, they can, and they can take it away from the royal family, show they're modern, they're fun, and everything else. And also, she arrived an hour late for a meeting which she was supposed to run. And the woman there was also a very intellectual woman, and she was furious with her. She didn't like the way she came with just, you know, band here and there, and she didn't like the fact that she actually didn't talk about what was going on in the country. She wasn't caring about that. She was talking about herself and her children and what it's like being a mom. And she said they weren't interested in that. They came, perhaps if you have ideas, you can discuss commercialisation here and all those things. And she's just very unpopular.
I mean, to be fair to the couple, they did receive a hero's welcome. It did feel a bit like a royal visit because of the pageantry and the red carpet rolled out, lots of fans, lots of bouquets of flowers. Many would argue that Meghan looked very elegant and very smart. However, it definitely rubbed the First Lady up the wrong way, didn't it? Yes. And what did she mean when she said that Meghan and Harry, or Meghan, was looking for Africa? What do you think she meant by that statement?
I think she was looking to be very important there, because she said, this is my home, this is my country. She'd go there and she'd want to be queen. I mean, she wants to be queen.
Was she implying that Meghan was somehow appropriating the culture?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Does she have a right to do that, considering she has lineage there?
The Prime Minister, the President, refused to see them. So you get the idea of what they're worried about.
Angela, I wish we had longer. We could do an hour. We could do the whole show on this, couldn't we? But can I just very briefly, a couple of seconds, ask you, we reported yesterday on a story circulating that Princess Catherine may not be seen in public until at least 2025. What is your understanding of the situation?
My understanding is to shut it all up with us, trying again and again to find out the date. I think it is bunkum. Well, we don't know. I bet you she doesn't know. I bet the doctor doesn't know yet, because it's a long attention to making her well. It needs a lot of time, and it does hurt you, and you can't sort of get better very, very quickly. And, you know, they're doing like they did before she mentioned that she'd had cancer.
Okay.
And they should leave her alone and just be quiet and wait. And you'll get about 2 or 3 days' notice, and then she'll do it.
Well, there you go.
We don't know when.
Wise words. Couldn't agree with you more. Angela, come back and see us again soon. My thanks to revered royal author and Harry biographer Angela Levin. Next up, an incredible Mark meets and a story of family tragedy. Find out why next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The most sexiest man in the UK at the moment, as voted for by a dating website, is that man on your screen, Jeremy Clarkson. I'm sorry, Peter, I know he's a man of a certain age, but I'm not getting this one.
Are you not?
No.
This is another reason for an old wrinkly like me to be deeply joyous. Hope springs eternal. He's grey-haired, he's balding, he's got a bit of a pot belly, he's quite tall. You know, I reckon I might be in with half a shower.
As long as only hope springing eternal, love. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, I agree with you. A lot of guys watching this will really be a bit befuddled as to how he's the sexiest guy. I think it's a sympathy vote.
No, I get it. I understand it.
But he's got a sense of humour,
yeah,
and he's got plenty of money.
But what's there to understand? How is he the sexiest man?
I'll tell you why. Because he's and I say this as a bloke, he's a man's man. He gets stuck in, he's involved, he's practical, he's physical.
Does that make him
funny,
sexy, though?
He's got money. I think men these days, if you ask me, too effeminate. Women don't want that. Women, well, I don't know what...
What do women want? Go on, just mansplain to me what women want. Go on,
sorry, tell us,
thank you very much. No, this is voted for by an illicit dating website, OK?
Oh, was it an affairs website?
Married women. But Idris Elba came third.
I just think Jez he's a man's man. Like I said, he's physical, he gets involved, he likes a beer, he's got plenty of money. How much did he get for the farm on Amazon?
That's so silly. So you're implying women only go for men with money?
Well, no, but I mean...
He did, didn't he? Just said that, yeah. He's got plenty of money, so they're very sexy.
It's normal for women to want to be with a man who can look after them, no?
No. Will you stop mansplaining what women want?
My mum had an expression, Ben. She said, when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. But trust me, if Idris Elba gets himself a pair of wellies, he'll be second next year.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A huge crisis at BBC's Strictly Come Dancing. I'll deal with that at 10 o'clock in my Take at 10. You won't want to miss it. But first, Mark meets in this evening politician and businesswoman, the Right Honourable the Baroness Meyer, who was awarded a CBE for her work in drawing attention to the shocking and devastating crime of child abduction, with a personal story of her own to tell. Despite having custody of her 2 sons, Catherine Meyer's German ex-husband refused to return them to London after a summer holiday visit in 1994. This led to an almost decade-long legal battle with the German and English courts to gain access to her boys. Baroness Meyer speaks about her incredible story in 2 books that she's written. One in particular is called They Are My Children Too. She went on to found a charity which is now called Action Against Abduction and has used her platform to campaign on the broader issue of children who go missing for any reason. She's also the widow of the wonderful Sir Christopher Meyer, former British ambassador to the United States. Baroness Meyer, welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. A privilege to have you on the show. You lost your 2 sons for a decade. It started with a summer holiday in 1994. What happened?
Well, I sent them on holiday to see their father. I had custody, and we had an arrangement that they would spend their holiday with their father. And 2 weeks, less than that, 7 days before they were due back, I received a letter telling me that my ex-husband, my husband at the time, was not going to send them back. And after that, it was the beginning of a sort of nightmare, a Kafkaesque situation, which, in a sense, if you start describing it, you will not believe it. And the point was that for 9 years, I practically did not see my children, even though I had custody, even though the British courts ordered the immediate return of the children to the United Kingdom. The German courts did not abide by this international convention. And so it was a terrible, terrible period. And I can imagine any parent can understand what it is not to be able to see your children and not to be able to do anything that you would have expected the law would have been there to protect you.
Catherine, what did this put you through emotionally? 9 years of more or less no contact with your sons, not being able to speak to them on the phone, have letters, photographs. Can you tell me about the personal toll on you?
No, because I think it's impossible to describe. It's just, horrible because you don't sleep at night, you worry about them. In some ways, I started this charity and I met many other parents who were in the same situation. In some ways, it's nearly worse than losing a child through death because there is no closure. And then people start judging you and they're saying, how come your children have not been returned? How come you can't see them? So it's incredibly, incredibly difficult. And it's the worry and it's even physical. I miss them physically, the cuddles, worrying for them. But I have to say a positive, because the positive is that through this nightmare, it's also how I met Christopher, my beloved husband who died only 2 years ago. And also through this trauma, I finally met my children again. 10 years later, my eldest son phoned me when he turned 18. And now we have a really, really nice relationship. And so to any other parent who goes through this horrific trauma, I say, never give up. And then the one thing I also say is, now that I'm in the House of Lords, I will continue to fight to make people understand the trauma. And unfortunately, a lot of marriages end up in divorce. And this is bad, but can please adults sort of think of the children, what it is doing to the children, because they are basically the people who suffer the most.
Baroness Meyer, a privilege to have you on the show with your remarkable story. Your husband was a lovely guy. He was a regular on the show. He once told me to calm down a bit, and he was right to do that. And there you go. So this book, Survivors, a quick word on that. I've got a couple of seconds. Tell me about this book.
That is the book that Christopher was still writing when he died. And I decided I have to do everything to publish it. And so I published it posthumously, and it's called Survivors, which my grandmother was, my mother was, and as you heard my story, I am as well. And it's an amazing story. It's a basically historical drama about my grandparents who escaped the Bolsheviks, and my mother who escaped. She ended up. Well,
I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to get you back on the show, and we're going to do a proper conversation about it. Let me say that the book is called Survivors by the late, great Christopher Meyer, and that was his wife. Thank you, Baroness Meyer. A fascinating conversation. We'll definitely do part 2 of that conversation. Next up, a crisis at the BBC and Strictly. Find out why next.
warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Met Office. Looking ahead to Bank Holiday Monday, and it's remaining unsettled across the UK with some further showers at times. Reason for the unsettled weather is this area of low pressure. It's going to hang around all weekend and into next week, maintaining this unsettled feel. For the rest of Sunday, still the risk of some further heavy rain, especially across parts of Scotland, but down towards central and eastern parts of England, it will turn drier and clearer. So here, a bit of a chill in the air first thing on Bank Holiday Monday, but elsewhere under the cloud and rain, temperatures holding up above 10 to 11 degrees. So, as I mentioned, some clear skies initially down towards eastern and central England, so some sunshine here first thing in the morning. Further west, we will see some showers, and they will migrate their way eastwards as the day goes on. For northern England and Northern Ireland, again, mixture of some cloud and a few bits of brightness, but again, some rain around. Southern Scotland, the risk of some persistent rain still here, with a mixture of bright spells and a few showers further north. But it's in fact across parts of northern Scotland where we do start to see the sunshine heat the ground. We will see some heavy and thundery downpours developing, so watch out for some thunderstorms here as we go through the course of the day. Elsewhere, still the risk of some showers, but they will be fewer and further between compared to Sunday, and also a little bit lighter. But for all of us, it will be a slightly cooler day. I think highs reaching around 16, 17, possibly maybe the odd spot seeing 18 degrees. On to Tuesday, a bright start in the east, but another band of rain will spread in during the course of the day. Turning brighter but showery behind it, but all the time temperatures reaching only at best average. Remaining unsettled on Wednesday and Thursday, but hints of something a bit drier and brighter coming through as we head towards next weekend.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not a wine, what is it? I've never won a penny in my life.
I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocks me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Gloria Di Piero. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
It's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. Following shocking allegations about one of the professional dancers on BBC's Strictly, I'll be dealing with the biggest scandal in the show's history. Also, is the introduction of national service the kick up the backside that British youngsters need? And is the Sun newspaper about to sensationally back Sir Keir Starmer? I'll be asking the Sun's former editor, Kelvin McKenzie. Plus, tomorrow's front pages, a packed show, lots to get through. And let's not forget, it is bank holiday weekend, so you can have a late night. Let's have a lively hour. Why don't you uncork a bottle of something French? Or fire up the kettle and let's get to work. A busy hour, lots to get through. A crisis at the BBC. What's going on with Strictly? And would I do that show? Find out after the headlines with the very rhythmic Ray Addison.
Thanks, Mark. Good evening. Here's all the latest from the GB newsroom. Police investigating the murder of a woman stabbed to death on a Bournemouth beach have released CCTV images of a hooded suspect. On Friday night, a 34-year-old was pronounced dead at Durley Chine Beach, while another 38-year-old woman was hospitalised with serious injuries, and she remains there tonight. Both are from Poole. The 17-year-old boy was arrested on suspicion of murder and remains in custody. Dorset police are urging anyone who recognises the person on your screen now to get in touch urgently. A British horse rider has died at an equestrian event in Devon. 36-year-old Georgie Campbell, who had represented Great Britain numerous times, fell whilst jumping a fence on the fourth and final day of the Bicton International Horse Trials. Governing body British Eventing say she was immediately attended to by medical staff but could not be saved. The horse Global Quest was uninjured. Now, the RAF pilot who died when his Spitfire crashed near RAF Coningsby has been named as squadron leader Mark Long. Police and emergency services rushed to the scene on Langrick Road in Lincolnshire just before 1:20 p.m. on Saturday. Described as a passionate professional aviator, for the last 4 years he'd been a pilot with the Battle of Britain memorial flight. The MOD has described the incident as a tragic accident and an investigation into its cause is now underway. 8 people were taken to hospital earlier after severe turbulence on a Qatar Airways flight from Doha to Dublin. Dublin Airport said emergency services, including police and fire and rescue, met the plane as it landed safely shortly before 1 o'clock this afternoon. The injuries to 6 passengers and 6 crew occurred as they were flying over Turkey. The proposed return of compulsory national service was rejected by a defence minister just days before the Tories pledged to make it law if the party wins the election. Andrew Murrison insisted there were no plans to reintroduce the policy and said it could damage morale if potentially unwilling recruits were forced to serve. Just 2 days later, as we now know, Rishi Sunak has outlined plans to make all 18-year-olds choose between serving in the army or volunteering in their local community. Labour has dismissed the policy as headline-grabbing gimmicks. And finally, the Shadow Chancellor says there'll be no increases to tax or national insurance under a Labour government. Rachel Reeves is promising a tough set of spending rules that she says will grow the economy while keeping taxes, inflation and mortgages as low as possible. The Tories say their plan, the current economic plan, is working, but Labour is arguing that people are feeling worse off. Well, for the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alert. Simply scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to the very rhythmic himself, Mark.
Thanks, Ray. Welcome to Mark Dolan. Tonight is the introduction of national service, the kick up the backside that British youngsters need. I'll be asking fearless former government minister Anne Widdecombe. Also tonight, is the Sun newspaper about to sensationally back Sir Keir Starmer? I'll be asking the Sun's former editor, Kelvin McKenzie. Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from my top pundits, Linda Jubilee, Neil Parish and Nigel Nelson. A packed hour, those papers are coming. Anne Widdecombe waiting in the wings. But first, my take at 10. I've never done Strictly. I've got 2 left feet, I have no timing, and I've got about as much rhythm in me as Stonehenge. Plus, going on that show is not good for your marriage. The curse of Strictly would no doubt strike. There's no way that those female dancers could keep their hands off me. They're only human. But this dance competition has been one of the biggest success stories in TV history, bringing in celebrities who have little to no previous ballroom experience. The likes of my dear friend Anne Widdecombe, who, of course, will be joining us in a couple of minutes, being thrown around the studio like a handful of pizza dough in a performance judges described as a mixture of horror and comedy. How dare they? And who could forget TV News legend John Sargent, dragged across the polished dance floor like a discontinued Zanussi fridge. These plucky celebrities, alongside a few stars who do have experience of musical theatre, all demonstrate a sense of fun, hard work. They practice for hours on end, they give it their best, and demonstrate a willingness to laugh at themselves along the way. It really is one of the greatest TV formats of all time, but it now faces a mortal threat. The Telegraph newspaper report that the BBC are to receive a dossier of evidence to support serious complaints about one of Strictly's professional dancers, the pneumatic Italian powerhouse Giovanni Pernice, a man with a six-pack so robust you could eat your breakfast off it. A number of celebrities who took part in the competition have employed top lawyers to file complaints about injuries and mental anguish suffered in training. The corporation is gathering evidence about claims of brutal training methods, bruised limbs, and a grueling boot camp atmosphere. Now, Pernice has previously said that he is merely a perfectionist who wants to get his partners ready for Strictly's Saturday night shows, whilst also caring for them greatly. He strenuously denies the allegations and has won support from other previous partners like the lovely Debbie McGee. But TV actress Amanda Abingdon, who starred in Sherlock, left Strictly halfway through for medical reasons, subsequently saying that she'd been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder after her stint on the show. She was partnered by Pernice. Meanwhile, another of his partners on the 2016 series, Laura Whitmore, spoke of her time on Strictly, writing, "I was placed with a dance partner I was extremely uncomfortable with. In the end, I felt broken. I cried every day." Now, these allegations against Pernice are multiple and very serious. Mental trauma, physical injuries, these claims must be addressed. If Pernice's female partners have suffered physically or mentally, my heart goes out to them, and it saddens me to hear that the likes of Whitmore, a wonderful broadcaster, or Abingdon, a huge acting talent, should be reduced to tears. But folks, welcome to showbiz. This is a TV programme with millions of viewers. The pressure to win is enormous, the competition fierce. Giovanni Pernice is an extraordinary physical specimen, a gifted dancer with a performance CV as long as your arm. This guy is the best in the business and has won Strictly in the past because, yes, he is a perfectionist. If you do a dance competition and you want to win, you're going to have aching limbs, bruised feet, and grazed knees. I get that from doing this show. Strictly is going to be physically and mentally draining. You're going to land on your backside. That happens on this show. There will be bumps and scrapes, sweat, blood, and yes, tears. Now, if anything truly egregious or inappropriate has happened that goes beyond high standards and healthy competition, then yes, Pernice must face the consequences of his actions. But let me tell you, you don't get to the top by accident. We know that Gordon Ramsay, the world's most famous and successful chef, is famously fierce in the kitchen with a mouth dirtier than a Ford Transit van. Margaret Thatcher, a woman whose cabinet meetings whilst in high office were about as jolly as a trip to Colditz. Sir Alex Ferguson, famous for the hairdryer treatment, in which his yelling was so loud in your face it literally felt like warm air was blowing in your direction. It's no accident that he is arguably the greatest British manager in the history of football. No pain, no gain. But in these woke times where your feelings matter more than the facts, and with mental health now becoming an industry fueled by counsellors charging by the minute and pharmaceutical giants offering a solution in a bottle, it seems that high standards, tough love and excellence are no longer acceptable. Everything's got to be touchy-feely and caring and sharing. The BBC should stand up for their star Italian dancer, but I think it's more likely that their next choreographed move will be to throw him under the bus. Whether guilty or not, Giovanni Pernice has probably had his last dance. Now, the BBC and Giovanni Pernice have both been contacted for comment. We've not received a response yet. It's a bank holiday, I'll concede that. But your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. I'll get to your views shortly. But first, tonight's top pundits, political commentator Linda Jubilee, former Conservative MP and now farmer Neil Parish, and GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Linda Jubilee, over to you.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. The fact of the matter is that Giovanni comes from Planet Professional, and some of the other people that have been complaining come from Planet Amateur. Now, I appreciate they're talented actresses, or maybe they've got performance skills. As you said, one of them, Laura Whitmore, is a talented broadcaster. But at the end of the day, this guy Giovanni is a top-level dancer. That's like being a world-class athlete. Of course he's got high standards. Of course he's going to put these people through their paces. What did they think when they signed up for this? They were going out for a teddy bear's picnic? No, not at all. The fact is, one of them has got bruised feet. It's dancing at a high level. Yep, that's what happens. As someone said, didn't they say it happens in professional dance competitions and weddings? You get hurt. But post-traumatic stress disorder? Nope. I just don't think it's on.
You're not having it. Nigel Nelson, do you have sympathy for the complainants in this case? Do you think Pernice has a case to answer?
Well, I do really. That's why I disagree with Linda on this one, that if Amanda Abbington got PTSD as a result of taking part in Strictly, there's something seriously wrong here. And the BBC have a duty of care to their celebrity contestants. They should be psychologically screened, and it's been reported that they're not, unlike ITV's Dancing on Ice, which does do that. So if the BBC have not been keeping an eye on the welfare of the people that come in, I mean, they're not professional dancers. So I think that if they are being damaged either mentally or physically, the BBC has got some questions to answer on this.
OK, I mean, what do you think about this, Neil? Clearly, the guy has denied the allegations. A bit of trial by media going on here, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, I join you, Mark, in the fact that I've got two left feet, so going on Strictly Come Dancing, it would not happen.
Can I just say, though, I've seen you
waltzing around.
Neil, I've seen you milking cows, and you do it with grace and panache. It's like this. It's like...
I think I would be the male equivalent of Anne Widdecombe going round the stage. So, but seriously, I think that if you agree to go on Strictly Come Dancing, it's going to be tough. It's a bit like me going into a boxing ring with a professional. I'm going to get knocked out. So what we don't know is those individuals, even those that are complaining, did they really want to win, and did they really want to be put through their paces? And if they did, then Giovanni was actually doing what his job was. So, I mean, it's interesting that it seems to have taken these things seem to take so long before the complaints sort of come through, and that I'm not so sure about. And I think if you go on Strictly Come Dancing, you're going to win. You're going to try and win, and I think you go in there and you're put through your paces. And so I think I think you just got to be tough enough to do it, or don't volunteer.
Okay.
Don't volunteer or go into it in the first place.
I've got to say, I can see you in sequins, OK? Especially when you're milking the cows. And you need the money because you're a farmer. But listen, what do you think about this? I'm going to get the views of Anne Widdecombe, who's next. Of course, she starred famously in Strictly. I'll also be asking Anne, is the introduction of national service the kick up the backside that British youngsters need? And in an exclusive Mark Dolan Tonight People's poll, we've been asking, were Nigel Farage's comments about some Muslims not sharing British values Islamophobic? The results are in. I shall reveal all, plus Anne Widdecombe, I think in sequins. See you in 2.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Have government done enough, do you think, to actually help them out?
I think there will be occasions where people have tried to run a venture, whether it be a pub, a restaurant or anything sort of like that, in the hospitality sector, and it hasn't become commercially viable because of costs, because of bad accounting or because of bad business people. That is just a fact of life. That happens in every sector. So there will be pubs that are closing because they've been poorly run. But I do think there will be occasions where people are forced out of the market. So if local councils aren't being able to pass on business rates, for example, maybe central government can do more. It always tries to do more to cut beer duty and things like that to keep pubs going. So I don't think it's necessarily just as plain as what James is saying, is that, you know, bad pubs will just inevitably be falling by the wayside.
The idea that you two gentlemen, you raging capitalists, support the government stepping in to protect pubs seems to be particularly peculiar. If a pub isn't commercially viable, it has to be allowed to fail.
Well, Sadiq Khan, you know, he has a nighttime czar that he pays well over 100 grand.
Yes.
And businesses are going under like you wouldn't believe in London.
She's a real nightmare.
What's your point?
Well, the point is that Labour aren't exactly helping out these businesses, are they? So
I'm saying that pubs should not be protected by the state. I'm all for a pub.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we subsidise pubs.
Well, that has been suggested. That's what James May is railing against. Although I have to say, it's all very well for James May and presumably his very posh gastropub. But if a pub is not fit for purpose, and May makes this point, you know, you've got to have decent, clean loos and a clean pub. And also, realistically, in this day and age, you know, times change, you've got to put on some decent grub as well if you want it to survive. We can't have the government stepping in to save our pubs. And anyway, my understanding over the last 10, 20 years, as a percentage, we haven't lost that many pubs, so they're not going under anytime soon.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, does the Strictly star Giovanni Pernice have a case to answer? Lawyers have been brought in. The BBC are looking at evidence of mental cruelty, of physical injuries from major stars on Strictly. The first big crisis in the show's history. Well, Jane has messaged in, gbnews.com/your say. And Jane is a GB News member who says, as a dance teacher, I like to watch the training they're put through. I think it's a Me Too situation that's happening to Giovanni. I remember Brendan Cole received similar criticism. Carl says, why did this lady not tell Giovanni to tone it down a bit? And were her feet too bruised to walk away? She's pathetic and now playing the mental health card. I suppose it's great publicity, though, says Carl. Carl, I think that's pretty harsh what you've got to say. But Mark Dolan tonight is the home of diverse opinion. And if that's what you think, I will put it on the air. Penice is a high-quality dancer, says John. These women are virching. I don't know what that means. Greg, what does virching mean? Never heard that, but I detect it's negative, unless it's a typo. But thank you for that. Oh, blimey. OK. Jacqueline says, Mark, I think you're pronouncing Giovanni's name wrong. Penice is an Italian name, and I believe it ends in the pronunciation che. Pernice. There you go. That's me told. Jacqueline, thank you for the correction. Always like to have corrections on the show. We don't get it all right, do we? Lots more to come. The papers on the way. But first, the newsmaker in the company of former government minister Anne Widdecombe. But first, the results of an exclusive Mark Dolan Tonight People's poll. Were Nigel Farage's comments about some Muslims not sharing British values Islamophobic? 88.1% say no, whilst 11.9% say yes. There you go. A bit of a landslide there in favour of Nigel. Keep those opinions coming. We'll return to that in the papers, but it is time for the newsmaker now in the company of Anne Widdecombe. And Anne, before we get to the big story of the day, your reaction to the Strictly scandal. Does this chap, Pernice, have a case to answer?
I doubt it very much. I mean, for heaven's sake, we're talking about a dance competition. You don't get post-traumatic stress disorder from a dance competition. You get it from a world war or something like that. And the fact is that if you're taking it seriously and you want to do well, you're going to find it hard going. Now, that didn't apply to me. Anton took one look at my efforts and decided that the less time I spent with my feet on the floor, the better. And as you can see there, he's making quite certain that my feet aren't on the floor.
But you worked hard on that show and you got better every week, Anne. So you do have to apply yourself, don't you? It's a demanding show to do.
If you are taking it seriously, it is hugely demanding. You're training long hours, and it's tough because you don't begin off as a professional dancer, at least most of them don't. And it can be very tough. But, you know, I keep a sense of proportion about this. And the other thing is this, which a lot of people may not realise. It is not the professional. It is the celebrity, in inverted commas, who is the boss. And the celebrity can say at any point, had enough training for today, I don't want to go any further. The celebrity can say at any point, that move is too hard, I don't want to do it, I think I might get hurt. And you know, people somehow think that the poor little things have got to do everything they've done. They haven't.
And you were brilliant on Strictly. Were there any moments in the process of doing it, whether that was rehearsals or the live shows, when it got the better of you?
No, because as I say, you know, we weren't taking it seriously. I certainly wasn't expecting to win. I did think it might have been fun if we got into the semi-final, but we just didn't quite make that. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I've never had such a fun time. And it was a wonderful release from responsibility because a few months earlier, I'd still been in Parliament, and now I was free, and I couldn't affect anything for the worse except Anton Shins. It was wonderful.
As per my take at 10, I think, sadly, that it's likely that Giovanni Pernice has had his last dance. I'm not sure he will be back on Strictly. Do you think that's fair?
I think that is very unfair. Totally unfair. And I think that he should be back on, and I think it's time that we tell these people who are whimping, ages after the event, I might point out, who are whimping about it now, simply to grow up, dear.
Agree with you, Anne. Couldn't agree more. Let's get to rather more significant matters. The Conservatives have set out a plan to require 18-year-olds to take part in a form of national service if the party wins the election on the 4th of July. Rishi Sunak said the scheme would promote a shared sense of purpose among our young people and a renewed sense of pride in our country. Labour has labelled the plan a gimmick, and other parties have criticised the government for its record on cutting troop numbers. The proposed new scheme would not be conscription, where people are legally required to join the armed forces for a period, but it would compel people by law to complete a community programme over a 12-month period or enrol in a year-long military training scheme when they turn 18. And is this the kick up the backside that Britain's youngsters need?
No, I don't think it is. I really don't. I mean, first of all, the army at the moment is so defeated that to take on that extra responsibility, is really going to be extremely difficult for them, and the government doesn't appear to have addressed that at all. Secondly, of course, by the time you're 18, you may have decided what you're going to do. Supposing you want to go and do voluntary service overseas, well, you can't under this. You join up the army instead. Supposing you've left school earlier than 18 and you're already working, well, what's this going to do? And I think there are all sorts of questions there that the government just hasn't considered. It's gone for the populist option, but the practicalities really need sorting out. And I think it's significant that at this point they can't even tell us what the sanction is going to be if you refuse to do it.
And do you feel that young people lack discipline compared, for example, to your generation?
Oh, I mean, I've no doubt about that, and I've no doubt that national service, played its role. But the whole purpose of national service is not to get the army to make things right socially with the youth. It's to skill the civilian population in preparation for a time of war. That's what it's supposed to be about. Now, maybe the government knows something I don't.
Anne, what's your reaction to the snap election? We haven't spoken since the Prime Minister pulled the trigger. I've received a message on WhatsApp from an unnamed but high-profile Conservative backbencher who is not happy. I said, what do you think of this date? Are you happy with it? He's just said no, exclamation mark. What do you think about the timing of this national poll?
Well, it was extraordinary. I mean, he's effectively handed the opposition power 6 months before he needed to, so why has he done that? There's not such compelling good news that it makes it worth doing. If he had a really good piece of news, it might be. So I don't really understand why he went for this option. It appears to be a bit of panic caused by reform, but, that's no good reason to hold a general election.
And what do you think about the campaign so far? What's your overview? Clearly, Labour enjoy a commanding poll lead. But the campaign so far, are you willing to sort of share your verdict on who might be edging it?
Well, I think there's no doubt at all that Labour is more than edging it at the moment. And if things go on as they do, we're going to have a Labour government. And I'm bracing myself for that because I don't believe any Labour Chancellor who says there'll be no tax and national insurance rises. There may not be for the first few months. There will be after that because they've got such big spending plans.
Of course, Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, has been very firm and very clear that she will not raise national insurance contributions or income tax. But, Anne, of course, you're entitled to your view, and you've been right in the past. You've got no doubt you'll be right again in the future. Look forward to catching you in a week's time. My thanks to former Government Minister, the brilliant Anne Widdecombe. Next up, folks, we've got tomorrow's front pages with full pundit reaction. Plus, how about this? Is the Sun newspaper about to sensationally back Sir Keir Starmer? I'll be asking the Sun's former editor, Kelvin McKenzie. Don't go anywhere.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Met Office. Looking ahead to Bank Holiday Monday, and it's remaining unsettled across the UK with some further showers at times. Reason for the unsettled weather is this area of low pressure. It's going to hang around all weekend and into next week, maintaining this unsettled feel. For the rest of Sunday, still the risk of some further heavy rain, especially across parts of Scotland, but down towards central and eastern parts of England, it will turn drier and clearer. So here, a bit of a chill in the air first thing on Bank Holiday Monday, but elsewhere under the cloud and rain, temperatures holding up above 10 to 11 degrees. So, as I mentioned, some clear skies initially down towards eastern and central England, so some sunshine here first thing in the morning. Further west, we will see some showers, and they will migrate their way eastwards as the day goes on. For Northern England and Northern Ireland, again, a mixture of some cloud and a few bits of brightness, but again, some rain around. Southern Scotland, the risk of some persistent rain still here, with a mixture of bright spells and a few showers further north. But it's in fact across parts of northern Scotland where we do start to see the sunshine heat the ground. We will see some heavy and thundery downpours developing, so watch out for some thunderstorms here as we go through the course of the day. Elsewhere, still the risk of some showers, but they will be fewer and further between compared to Sunday, and also a little bit lighter. But for all of us, it will be a slightly cooler day. I think highs reaching around 16, 17, possibly maybe the odd spot seeing 18 degrees. On to Tuesday, a bright start in the east, but another band of rain will spread in during the course of the day. Turning brighter but showery behind it, but all the time temperatures reaching only at best average. Remaining unsettled on Wednesday and Thursday, but hints of something a bit drier and brighter coming through as we head towards next weekend.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, it's 10:30, and Alistair, let's have the graphic and the sting, bit of music, and it sets up the papers. That's what's coming up. Yeah, I think you'll agree that was elegantly done. The Daily Telegraph. Young royals face national service in Sunak plan. Young royals will have to spend a year in the military or volunteer in the community under Conservative plans to revive national service. We've not earned the trust of the British public, Starmer warns. Private schools must cut costs to pay VAT bill. And heat pumps are too expensive, MPs warn. Daily Mirror now. And Tories' latest barmy plan, desperate. National service will cost billions. It's the last thing the military needs. And leaked documents suggest teens would be jailed for refusing. And a rare good news story. Alton Towers' Leah marries fellow crash survivor Joe. My best day, of course. This is Leah Washington and Joe Pugh, who were injured on a ride at Alton Towers. I think it was the Smiler ride. The devastating accident. But they found happiness after what they've been through. We wish them well. The I newspaper now. And we have Labour plan to rebuild Britain will rely on private finance. Starmer's 10-year strategy for major projects such as roads, railways, ports, offshore wind and housing will be set out within a year if he wins the general election. Labour will pledge to overhaul the planning system for any national significant infrastructure proposals. A promise also made by Sunak's government funding plan could cause controversy after widespread criticism of Tony Blair's use of the private finance initiative. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves today ruled out increasing income tax or national insurance under a Labour government, but did not rule out spending cuts. I won't hold my breath. The Guardian. Sunak's national service plan is bonkers, says ex-military chief. Zelensky in appeal over peace summit. And in that number, fans delight as Saints go marching into the Premier League. Congratulations to Southampton, who are now a Premier League team, and commiserations to Leeds, who did not prevail today, but I'm sure will be back in time. The Times now. Labour, we will act fast to win trust on security, and day trips on prescription for lonely pupils. Those are your front pages. Let's get full pundit reaction now from political commentator Linda Jubilee, former Conservative MP and now farmer. I bet he's glad he got out of the Commons in the nick of time, Neil Parish, and GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Let me tell you that it's a very happy occasion. Actually, two very good things happened this week. Producer Greg had his birthday, and we've celebrated with the world's smallest chocolate cake. But we're going to have to share it with Neil Parish because, Neil, it's your birthday as well.
It is.
And I'm told it's the big 5-0, so congratulations.
Yeah, slightly more than that.
Yeah. Apparently you put your age through Gary Barlow's accountant.
Yes, that's good. At least he subtracted some of it.
Well, that's it. Listen, happy birthday. Can I say, whatever age you are, you look in rude health, so happy birthday to you. We'll spare you the ignominy of singing at you. But I think Greg's going to bring some cake in during the break.
Excellent.
Can I just ask you your reaction to that rather surprise news of an election on the 4th of July. You were on those backbenches a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So how would you feel now if you were a Tory? Would you be unhappy about the dates?
Well, I think I'd be terrified, you know, certainly of facing the electorate at the moment. But, you know, whenever they faced them, it was going to be thus. I mean, I suppose the one thing that Rishi Sunak did actually achieve was an element of surprise. Now, whether the surprise will help, I don't know. The situation is that, you know, inflation's down, the economy's improving, and so he's going to go for it. I think the one thing you can say to him, he didn't drag it out to the very last minute. I think that might be a slight advantage.
If you were a sitting member, would you feel ready for the campaign?
I mean, I suppose most members would be ready, but like I said, I think the trouble that most Tory MPs will have is that they're not looking forward to this campaign, because you can imagine it will be difficult on the doorstep. And so I would think there's very mixed views out there. But the thing is, the gun had to be fired at some stage. It's off, and they'll have to get on with it. You know,
Nigel,
that's the way politics works.
It is a borderline miracle that they kept this secret, don't you think?
Yeah, we were all amazed. I mean, some of the cabinet didn't even know when they were going into Downing Street.
That's right. Is it because Sunak decided 11 minutes before he announced it? Is that why it was a secret? Or how long do you think they were planning this?
I don't think they were planning for very long. I think what happened...
Days or weeks?
Probably days. On the basis that Jeremy Hunt probably told him, sorry, boss, we've run out of money. They've got too many bills coming up. It's the infected blood scandal, £10 billion worth of compensation. The sub-postmasters have to be compensated. We haven't even got anywhere near the WASPy women yet, and that's another £3 to £7 billion. So there was no room for tax cuts in an autumn budget. On the basis of that, why not go now? If you can't promise anything for the future, there's no point holding on.
So you don't think the decision was as bonkers as some are suggesting it is?
No, I just think it was a decision forced on them, that I expected him to go in November, hoping something would come up. But obviously they got to the point of saying there's just nothing left.
Linda, you think this was just essentially a few days before the announcement?
I think it was 3 or 4 days. I think one or two people like Oliver Dowden knew what was going to happen. I think it happened. And, you know, now that a decision has been made, I think we're all a little bit relieved. I gather that he actually went to the King without telling Cabinet first.
Which is relatively unprecedented. And, of course, Lord Cameron, the Foreign Secretary, was in Albania.
Yeah.
Shaps was
And we
away.
got clues, didn't we? We got clues because there was a big old to-do with Lord Cameron being in Albania. They'd line the streets in flags and they've got all the bunting out and everything else. And, you know, it was a big deal and he had to come back. And then
he was there for 89 minutes and that was it.
Do you think this was the least bad option in the end for Sunak?
It's very difficult to say. It's such a difficult risk calculation. But I think he got some good figures and he thought, OK, you know, there's a tide in the affairs of men, I'm going to go.
I think the figures were better at the moment. They were probably getting slightly worse down the road. Like you say, a lot of bills to come. And I think he said, right. And I also think it stops all those backbenchers who decide that they're going to unseat him, because the moment the general election's called, they have to unite, they have to get on with it. And I think if I was Rishi Sunak, I would have probably made the same decision myself.
Nigel Nelson, The Guardian, Sunak's national service plan is bonkers, says ex-military chief. The Telegraph, young royals face national service in Sunak plan. Has this policy backfired before it's even started?
Yes, and not just the royals. I would imagine that Rishi Sunak's daughters, if they're not being educated in California by the time it comes in. Yeah, this is a plan that was drawn up on the back of a fag packet, which of course Rishi Sunak can't ban now. So that's where it came from. There's no detail in there anywhere.
I wonder whether Sunak is so stressed he's actually taken up smoking.
No, it's Mexican coke.
I think.
What is Mexican coke? When it's another conversation.
But as plans go, I mean, the idea of talking about compulsory volunteering, there are two words that do not go together. So it was just it's an absurd plan. If you want a national service system, which I'm not against, David Cameron tried it and it just fizzled out because it became a holiday camp for middle class kids, basically. But if you actually want something like that, don't use stick, use carrot. Encourage them to go and do it, and that's what he hasn't done.
But Nigel, you're being a party pooper again, because actually the public will love this policy. The Prime Minister's not stupid. He announced this.
But that's what it's all about.
But what about the 18-year-olds who have to actually carry it out? They're not going to love it.
All they need is a kick up the backside.
I think it's difficult to implement, but I'm not against this because I think it actually we've got a shortage of people going into the armed forces. I think perhaps if you give them the taste of the armed forces, some of them may well decide to further it into their career. So I mean, I think the whole thing's complicated and yes, difficult to get there. But I wouldn't rule it out, and I wouldn't sort of necessarily say that it's all wrong.
But if you want to do it properly,
I mean, it's certainly been brought in at the last minute, especially when you had Andrew Morrison actually saying, 2 or 3 days ago, that it wasn't going to happen. I get all that, but you see, nobody knows what's in the manifesto. When I was in Parliament, you know, if you got one line in the manifesto that you knew was going in, you were lucky. And see, nobody knew when the election was going to be called either. And so therefore, the whole thing, you know, even if you're a cabinet minister, half the time you don't know what's in the manifesto. I mean, it's a crazy way we call these elections and do them in some ways, but of course it's trying again to have an element of surprise. And yes, I dare say the policy would be a little bit of populism.
Look, the headline in the Mirror,
say that.
Desperate. Is that fair in regards to the Prime Minister? Does this look like a desperate policy,
Well, it looks
Linda?
like a gimmick. That's what it looks like. And that's happened before. And whilst I agree with you, it would be popular with the public. They kind of do like the sound of it. But when you're going to implement a policy like this, you've got to think it through. I talked to a former military guy today about this, and he said the problem is you've got 30,000, 40,000 people come in. They do a year's basic training. They just get to the point where they can offer something proper and they get the opportunity to leave and they go. The other problem you've got is that the type of person you want to sign up isn't the type of person that would really benefit from this problem. You know, you've got really well-adjusted people that don't have a problem, that can find jobs, etc., etc.
But I still think it might encourage some in that wouldn't have thought of the military in the first place. So I don't think it's all bad, to be honest with you. But I think it is difficult to implement.
Nigel Nelson,
how do you square it off? How do you square it off when you know that our military has been hollowed out over a number of years? I know they've got more money lately, but at the end of the day, you've got to spend proper money on the military.
Yeah, and it's been long-term underfunded.
Not on a little project.
By more than one party in the last couple of decades. Nigel, briefly, if you can, the newspaper, Labour plan to rebuild Britain will rely on private finance. This sounds very Blairite, this.
A bit, but, I mean, they've already said that. The rebuilding plan is Great British Energy, and the idea there is that if we led the world in green technology, you could get actually not just economic growth, but a real boom. Jeremy Hunt says it's worth £1 trillion to British business by 2030 if we get this whole thing right. Now, Great British Energy will be a public-owned company, but you obviously need private finance to be invested in it to make it work. So it will be a partnership between the private sector and the public.
Neil?
I remember coming in 2010 when we had a note from the tree territories saying there's no money left. But it was worse than that because they'd done all these PPI deals.
Liam was joking.
Built all these schools, and then we had to pay for them.
Everything
right?
gone on never.
And then the councils have to pay for them, the schools have to pay for them out their budgets. It all looks wonderful, but in the end, it has to be paid for. In a way, it's better actually to pay it up front, and then at least you know what you've spent.
Well, listen, coming up, does anyone seriously think that Labour won't raise taxes if they win the election? I'll debate that with my pundits. Plus more front pages, including the Daily Mail. And is the Sun newspaper about to sensationally back Sir Keir Starmer? I'll be asking the paper's former editor, Kelvin McKenzie. That's next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
He's meeting his father, the King, for just the second time since his father's cancer diagnosis. Harry's going to an Invictus Games gig at St Paul's on Wednesday, and his father is hosting a garden party at Buckingham Palace. Once they're all said and done, about 7 p.m, they are going to meet, apparently.
Yeah,
but crucially not the Princess of Wales.
Well,
I think it's a wonderful story, and obviously you would. If you're visiting the country, you haven't seen your dad and he's ill with cancer, of course you would go grab a Costa. Can't wait to see the pictures of them in Costa together, just having a little catch-up.
Do you know, they might embrace?
I would hope so, but...
Do you know, I think it's really important that life's too short not to have a relationship with your family. I know too many people that aren't speaking, or they've fallen out because of money or whatever, and we're only on this earth for a very short time, and what a shame not to have a relationship with your own
haven't they?
son.
I mean, it's the trust issue that is really the problem here, and straight after this they're going to be heading off to Nigeria, and they're still involved in all of these sort of like commercial and media activities. If you don't have that trust there with your family, and you're responsible for breaking that trust down, it's not really, it's sort of on you, isn't it?
It's still mendable, though, I think, and we've all got people in our family that maybe we wouldn't trust with our bank details or something like that, so they can just not. You know, Charles shouldn't be going to Harry, guess what, you can't tell anyone. He's like, that's not what they're going to talk about, are they? They're not going to tell him anything.
The king is his father, but it's different, isn't it, if it's your brother, it's your sibling, whereas a father's probably perhaps more likely to be forgiving and to be wanting to sort of reunite. Do you think maybe it's going to be harder for him to mend that relationship with William and Catherine?
I think it's really, really hard. I mean, I can't see how they can... But they need to get in a room together. They need to speak. The only way that you are going to break down barriers when it comes to relationships is by facing it and speaking about it.
You say life's too short, but some would say, well, that's the perfect reason not to tolerate any nonsense.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, well, listen, folks, lots more to get through. Got the Daily Mail in just a moment. But let me tell you that it is not only producer Greg's birthday this week, but today it is our lovely pundit Neil Parish's birthday. So, Neil, I've splashed the cash. Right. This is Tesco Taste the Difference.
Is it? Very expensive.
Oh, no, wait a minute. Taste the Difference is Sainsbury's, isn't it?
Sainsbury's is
Now, this is the finest. Other supermarkets are available. You've got Lidl, Aldi do very good.
Thank you very much.
Cake.
Lovely cake.
You've also got Waitrose, and you've got Morrison's. I've been through all of them.
You're sort of hedging your bets now, aren't you?
Don't forget Londis, and OK, I'm running out of brands now.
You are the expert.
I think probably you've got shares in all of those, have you, Mark?
Definitely. Happy shopper. Well, there you go. Well, look, happy birthday. Also, we missed Linda's birthday. She was on air with us on the 5th of May, and it was your birthday, and so happy birthday belatedly.
Thank you.
Fabulous, fabulous. OK, folks, we've got the Daily Mail now. Let's have a look at the front page. And we have Rishi fights back after his national service plan is ridiculed, and a really tragic story. Georgie Campbell, who died today, horse riding star dies after fall at water jump. So sad, and a real tragedy of a great athlete and a fabulous person. OK, well, it's time now for the last word with former Sun newspaper editor Kelvin McKenzie, the co-founder of TalkSport as well. Is the Sun newspaper about to sensationally back Sir Keir Starmer? In 1997, the paper famously supported Tony Blair. In 2009, they returned to the Tories backing David Cameron. So could they switch sides yet again? Kelvin, good to see you. Do you think Rebecca Brooks is mulling over a pro-Starmer front page at some point?
Well, actually, with respect to Miss Brooks, it's not her call anyway. She's a workaday chief executive. It's Rupert Murdoch, even although he's retired, still likes to dabble in politics, and he will decide what's what. On the question that you raise, an important question, if the Sun did endorse Starmer, that would be an absolute disgrace. back in 2013, 2014, he was DPP, actually it was a bit before that, he was DPP when 25 Sun journalists, all of whom were cleared, by the way, all of whom were cleared after 3 years of having their lives ruined, right? And the thing about Mr. Murdoch is that I know from personal experience, and anybody will tell you who works for him, whether it's the management, the editors, or the journalists, he drove them forward to get bigger and better stories. Why? Bigger stories equal bigger sales. Bigger sales at that time led to bigger advertising revenues and more profits. So the truth is, he handed over to the police, organised very cleverly, a whole series of emails and invoices which were looked as though these journalists were guilty. They weren't guilty of anything. The Lord Chief Justice said they weren't guilty of anything, right? Journalists' jobs is to find stuff out. And actually, as you all know, and as you've just seen with the Post Office, there's a whole series of PRs and management who are spending their entire time trying to stop you, often funding these organisations, from know what's going on. Anyway, so Rupert pushes you forward to get the stories, and then immediately the old bill come knocking. What does he do? He hands over all the information. An absolute disgrace. So the truth about the matter, if he endorses Starmer, this will be a shocking journey that he's been on, and I really do object to him even thinking about it. My advice to him is sit it out, but he won't do that because he will want things from a Labour government going forward, and he thinks the endorsement of the Sun matters. It doesn't matter at all. You know, when I was there, basically half the country was reading the paper every day. Today, honestly, it is rare as rocking horse manure, right? And it doesn't matter what the Sun thinks anymore. Now, it does, in a funny way, it does matter what the Times thinks. But actually, in relation to print generally, and news sites generally, the days of influence in that way don't matter. So I have no idea why he wants to do this, but I think it'd be an absolute disgrace if he does it. But he uniquely, for Rupert, he has some strengths, and one of them is his ability to honestly, basically the phrase which follows Rupert around is lower the lifeboat I'm in, right? He honestly couldn't give a monkey's stuff about anybody or anything. What is in his own interest? And if he thinks it's in his own interest, he wants to be on the right side of the argument. He doesn't care one way or the other. What he cares about is money. He doesn't care about power, and he doesn't care about influence. Will it help my bottom line in the long run? So actually, it would be a shocking moment if he does it, but there have been other shocking moments, so he probably doesn't care what I think.
Well, Kevin, stay with us. Let me bring in our top pundits, Linda Jubilee, Neil Parish and Nigel Nelson. Linda, do you think that the media will influence the outcome of the next general election, whether it's the Sun, the Times newspaper, the Mirror, GB News, BBC One, you name it?
I think that Kelvin's right, that the Sun won't have anywhere near as much influence as it used to have. The Times may well have influence. I think social media will have a lot of influence this time. But where I do completely agree with Kelvin is that Rupert's going to go exactly where his commercial interests lie. That is exactly what's going to happen.
You see, Mark, I'm old enough to remember the '92 election, and they had Neil Kinnock in a light bulb in the Sun, and then would the last man out of Britain actually turn out the light? And the Sun at that time claimed
McKenzie
that they won the election for the Tories. But you know, the readership then, as was said, was much higher. But I mean, I think they will go whichever way they think will suit them.
Well, listen, Kelvin was my first boss in the media. I'm not prone to disagree with him, Nigel Nelson, but what I would say is, yes, not many people read The Sun anymore, but Labour would hail that as a sort of big PR victory, wouldn't they, Nigel?
Yeah, I think that it's symbolic. I think Kelvin's absolutely right. The newspapers have no longer got the kind of influence they used to have in the past because not that many people are reading them nowadays. But it is symbolic if the Sun turns there because it's Rupert Murdoch. So my guess is, by the way things are looking, if Rupert Murdoch went went for Tony Blair in 1997, I think it's highly likely he'll go for Keir Starmer in 2024.
Kelvin,
Kelvin,
thank you so much for joining us. I've only got a couple of seconds left. You've been really interesting on Twitter over the last few months. I think you feel like I do that actually the Tories and Rishi Sunak is a little underpriced in the market, and perhaps Starmer and Labour overpriced. Do you think there's anything Sunak can do to get his nose across the line?
I'm not suggesting he's going to get his nose across the line, but the idea that, as one poll showed the other day, that he was 25 points in front is for the birds. My bet is that it will be a lot closer, but it still feels like a a high single-figure win for Starmer. Those old-fashioned things like that national service thing, which has come in for ridicule today. Actually, funnily enough, that kind of thing will chime with some kinds of
There
people.
you go. Kelvin, you chimed with us tonight. We'll catch up soon. Thanks to my pundits. And I'll see you Friday at 8. Headliners is next.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking ahead to Bank Holiday Monday, and it's remaining unsettled across the UK with some further showers at times. The reason for the unsettled weather is this